Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us for the third in our series of 4 calls where we discuss tools and tips to help you become more confident traders. This week, we are discussing how to objectively review your own trades or trades other people may share, like your accountability partner. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we're about 45 to 50% each. Some people took trades today, some people did not. And we have 13 people with us today. So thank you all for being here. I think we can probably get started. And so today we'll be talking about how to objectively review your trades. And since about half of us took trades today and half of us didn't, this tells me that we're going to have some information that you guys are going to be able to share with us. So the reason we wanted to ask who all took trades today is because we want to use live examples and want to, do a little bit of the work together, because we want this to be engaging, and we want it to be really valuable for each of you, and not just have it be like, okay, let me show you what I did, and then you try to copy along, but let's actually do it together. So is there anybody here who would like to share a timestamp of a trade that they took today?
And maybe if you guys are comfortable to share too, did anybody who took a trade today already go back to review it?
Yes.
I will, but I have not reviewed it.
Okay.
Give me a second here. There's lots of noise going on. Okay, timestamp. Just give me a second. I knew you guys were going to do this. I should have been on the ball, right? So 1638.
And what time zone do you use? Are you on New York?
That's fusion.
Fusion time? Okay, so then that is UTC +2. All right. So there's a couple of different ways you can quickly jump to things here. You can use your little calendar and you can jump to the time, or you can scroll back, whatever is easier for you. So let's have a look here. So 1638. And
I'm just going to grab a chart too. Just
perfect. So can everybody see this nice and clearly?
I might.
Yes, yeah, we can. Sorry, my kids just got home.
That's okay. Hi, kids. All right. So I'm going to mark the candle that the trade was taken on. So this was a sell, I'm assuming. And I think I'll just kind of talk about what I see here. And then Mike, maybe you can let me know if it's in alignment with the reasons you took the trade. And also, since this is not a bearish engulfing candle, there is no fib to be drawn on it. So I see this as this is your entry candle, Mike?
Yeah, TDI shift.
Yeah, so TDI shift sell. And so then how would we know where we might be targeting for our trade?
I would say previous low.
Yeah. So if we're looking
Let
back
me
at
just find that as well.
previous structure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you can see here where price was on the TDI, and you can mark up all of these things, just kind of like when you do your homework, you can mark up all the different kind of areas and things that you're looking at. So price had not been overbought, but it did move down across the TDI here. Here's the shift. And where did you end up taking this trade to?
I took it to 1639 and 1/2.
1639. Okay. So this is the exit candle. Did you trail your stop or did you set a take profit?
It hit my trailing stop.
Okay. How many points did you receive for this trade?
On that one, 31, 30, 41.
41.
Yeah, 808.94 to 773. And I'm on Fusion, so I always look at Global Prime. So
Right. So just for the sake of like, if we were pretending here, let's say that we entered at the close of this candle. So that's the open of the next candle. Oopsies, come back. Just so that people can see what you maybe would mark up. And then you can mark maybe another line where you got out. Oh, my magnet's on. Just pretend that we got it there to the end of structure. So I'll just call it take profit. Oops. Yeah. And you can also mark up the dollars, and you can put this on here if you want to, but then it's a really good thing to, once you've taken your trade, then go and put it into your why is my thing not working? Into your compounding calculator. So I've marked up a few of the trades that I took on my challenge account. And so for each of the days, these are my profits or gain or losses. And then on the second tab, I've entered the trading journal here, and you can fill out all of the information that you're gathering when you're analyzing your trade. And a really good thing to do when you are analyzing these trades is look at what were your emotions when you were taking it? How were you feeling as you were in the trade? So Mike, do you want to talk about your feelings as price was moving?
well, I'm gonna say I'm never 100% prepared, but I use Jake's thing when I see a TDI shift. Um, right now I've been taking TDI shifts on my account, and I try to take with the trend, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I will take counter trend trades as well, but my emotions were when I take a trade, my emotion usually is darn, I'm too slow because there's always a few seconds into that other. I didn't get right in at the beginning, right? So that's one of the problems I have. And then I like watching it go down, and then when I see it start to come up, I'm starting to trail, right? And as you know, the yellow now where you see it is pulled down even farther when the trade is going on, right? Because it's pulled down during the candle, and then when the candle closes, it moves up or where it roughly should be. So I guess that's kind of one of my things. When I'm in profit, of course, I'm happy. Uh, I set a stop loss right away. And then I check and I make sure that my stop loss. So first thing is 30 points typed in. And if you go up 30 points from that candle, you'll see that it's pretty close. Yeah.
Oops. So
So we're good.
30.
We're high above the high. So I'm pretty confident. I'm not going to be too worried about it. Now, if I seen a green candle right away at my entry and it engulfs this, then I get out right away, or I'm trying to get out right away. In this case, obviously the continuation past the 50 made me feel happier, and then I started moving down, pretty quick, right? So I take it on my phone and I switch over to my computer, and start dragging and hitting okay, drag okay, right? So I'm not, it's not like Global Prime. I'm not sure if there's a shortcut on Fusion at this point, but that's how I usually manage it. But on my phone, I always have my exit ready to close the trade. So I have closed the trade open on my phone, and I'm following down and following down, and once I hit the 1%, I'm happy, right? When I hit 2%, you get a bigger smile on you, and when you hit 2.5, 3%, you should be happy, right? The risk to reward isn't quite right, but I'm still learning to deal with that. One of my rules nowadays is try not to overtrade. So uh, I took a total of 3 trades today. The last one I kind of forced it, which I shouldn't have taken. I got lucky. I made some blue. If I would have stayed in, I would have made more blue. But you know what? It's patience, and if I follow my rules, I shouldn't even have taken that trade. So right away I wrecked my following the rules. But again, felt good, and I think the overall for the day was like 3.8%. So I think on Teresa's call, I said I was done. Threw my phone out the window, but then my phone, for some unknown reason, got activated one more time for a trade a little later, which I got to learn to stop doing, right? So
I did
Go,
that
go,
yesterday.
gadget
the
arm.
funny thing is, I sat on my phone for an hour before I took a trade. So I
Oh, good.
was actually mentally done, right? So
So I have a couple more
and today when
questions
I woke
about
up, I
this.
felt good, right? So I missed
Mhm.
yesterday because I'm not feeling 100%, but we're
Mm.
getting there. And my
So,
mindset was good this morning for sure.
so the
Again, one of my entries is a TDI shift, so
so you're following your trading plan.
yeah. And just think how much I would have made if I would have just followed that rule until it shifted back up. No, I'm just bugging.
Well, I mean, if
That's
you follow
hindsight,
your
right?
rules
There's
all
lots
the
of exits
time,
before that.
yeah. Can I explain the yellow EMA point? Down here. So Yvonne, yeah, so the yellow EMA moves and it stops where it got pulled down to at the close of a candle. So with this candle here, the point, it's pointy because it came and it stopped here, and then the next candle pushed up so big that it dragged the average of the last 5 candles back up. So then the trajectory of or the slope of the EMA is much sharper if it had continued down, because it's an average of 5 candles. You can see there's a lot of movement in these last 5 candles. Does that explain it?
So when you see it take a sharp turn or a reversal, then get out of the trade then, right?
Well, Mike was out of this trade already.
Okay.
So if he was trailing it down while it's moving, he may have even gotten out while this was wicking back, because it pushed down quite a bit further before it ended up closing, and then it opened with a green candle that came up. So you'd be looking for your exits. So
Okay.
there's a few exits here. If you're not using a trailing stop, probably the next thing that would have happened for you would
Yeah.
have been a VBC exit down here. So we can mark that. It's not where Mike ultimately got out, but it's good for practice to mark up the things that you see and mark up what you know. And so Mike had even just said one of the things that he does when he's trailing is, as soon as he sees a green candle, if he's selling, then he's looking like, where's he going to get out? Or he's trailing tighter.
Right. Okay.
And so this is the first technical exit. And then this is the next exit, which is the KC.
Oh yeah.
So those 2 exits would have triggered at the exact same time at candle close. It would have VBC'd
Oh,
back into the volatility bands, and it would have given you a KC exit.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And just with that volume, that shows a lot of buying pressure. So
This is the candle
This
that
is
for a lot of people, it created a huge gap because the candle couldn't even paint fast enough how quickly it moved. So at that point in time, you would be literally thanking your trailing stop loss. And this is a really good example as well of when Teresa says, you know, a lot of times we would enter and we want to wait for the yellow to get below our entry price before we move our stop loss. But there's times when a candle moves really aggressively. And if you're that many points in profit, like this is a 38-point candle, if you had 38 points on the table, would you want to give up all of that? Or would you want to secure a chunk of that? And so, you know, she probably would be like, in this instance, it moves so quickly, let's secure some of that, push down a little more, let's secure some of that. And as this candle pushed down as well, you know, I'm certain that she would be saying like, let's secure this, secure this, secure this. So we probably,
Exactly.
most of us would have been out on the second candle already because it moved so aggressively and it gave us so many points right off the hop.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I closed it with 35 points.
35. Okay, so I marked it as 41.
Good.
Still,
Thank
that's a
you.
very nice trade.
Yeah.
35 points to start your day.
Again, this is when we were having that issue too, and we were talking about brokers, because this is where that, and Brandy mentioned it, this is where that there's a bearish bullish candle. It's a red candle, but it went up, right? So that's pretty scary that, you know, now it's on Global Prime, but on Wanda it didn't do that. It just jumped right up, right?
Well, Awanda painted the whole candle and Global Prime and CurrencyCom gapped and the candle actually looked bearish, but it wasn't. In fact, it had caused so much momentum up that by the time it could print on some of those brokers, it was already coming back down. And so that's why it ended up looking bearish. Fantastic. Thank you for reviewing this with us, Mike. And so can I ask if on any other day you saw this trade set up the way that it did? Is this something you would have been comfortable taking any other day?
I'm going to say yes because of the TDI shift, and I've been, like I say, it's part of my trading one. It's been working for me, to say the least. So I would say yes. I don't like what happened afterwards. And the other thing is, it is pretty close to open, which is kind of scary too. It is after open. It's after the 5 minutes, obviously, but you know, there could have still been some big problems here. So, you know,
Well, and as
kind of
candles are painting
interesting.
too, you don't know what's going to come next. So
No, that's
definitely,
right.
you know, if you're trailing this and you're following your plan, if trailing your stop loss is part of your plan, then you would just be following your rules and you would have been taken out already. And then by the time this candle that caused all the fear and the volatility painted, you know, he was already out. But if you waited and you didn't trail your stop loss on this one, this candle probably would have scared people who would have closed manually, even if they still had their stop loss up here, because the way that it shot as quickly as it did, it seemed like a news candle or a tweet or something, even though news wasn't happening yet. News did end up happening on this 45 candle right here. And I know that some other people took some entries after that played out very well, but for them, is there anybody else that wants to share?
I have a few comments on this trade
Okay,
as well.
yeah.
So Mike had said TDI shifts are one of his entries. And the point of going back from my perspective over your trades is we really want to be objective. So this trade worked in his benefit and he profited on it. But when we're entering a trade, we need to truly be at peace with what we're risking and the probability that the trade can really go either way. We don't know what's going to happen, but based on what you know and what you've seen and our strategy, we've got a higher probability of it going in our favor. So one of the things he said that I really loved was that when he takes a TDI shift, he watches for the next candle. And if that candle turns green, that's a signal for him to maybe take an early exit out of there and cut his losses. So we did mention that we're still fairly close to open on the shift. And then another thing, this is a with trend trade in terms of AGB, but we didn't close over the aqua, and the wick on that TDI candle is also 50% of the candle, which shows a lot of buying pressure at the close of that candle as well. So Mike's still confident in taking this trade, but those are things that you would want to recognize that there is still the possibility of it going against you and having a plan besides hitting your full stop loss.
Right. And I even watching this, I liked it until it did that, until it did not close over the EMA and that wick. I was like, nope, not my entry. And then I considered entering on the EMA shift, which came afterwards. And had there not been this volatility, like it still would have been decent. There's still 26 points in this candle, not including the wick. With the wick, there's still 39 points. But I still stayed out because even though for me, EMA shifts are an entry for me, especially if they've TDI shifted, or I like a true shift. But this one, there was still a few reasons for me to say no to that one. And then, does everybody know about the little camera up here where you can save a copy of your chart link or your screenshot of it? Hopefully. Anyway, if you don't, that's where it is. It's up in the top corner. Perfect. Okay, good.
Awesome. Another thing that I do, depending on it, if you guys are all at a stage where you're actually watching your own trading view, if you're on Teresa's call, or pardon me, if you're trading on your own, watching trading view, I will actually draw my fib extension when I take that trade. So when I'm going back later in time, I need to find my entry time based on my broker, but I also know it's going to be one of these markups that I've already got a fib on. And I typically will draw a long short position box as well. And I especially make sure I've got the long short position box if it's a TDI entry, because we don't draw a fib on those entries. So it just can save you a little bit of time down the road when you're scrolling, especially on those over trading days. Those are the most important days to be going back and looking at your trades objectively for why did you take it? How are you feeling when you took that trade? And now that the trade is over, are there any clear signs of why you maybe shouldn't have taken that trade so that you can have that recognition next time, to have a little bit more caution, or just recognize your own emotional journey and where you're at?
Yeah, those are all fantastic tips and super beneficial, especially when you're like on the fly and like, it's a good idea too, like try not to be so eager to look for the next entry, like instantly. If you can take a couple of seconds and draw your fib or draw a long short box or draw something like that on there, you're giving yourself a minute too to like take a second, do something. Jake talks about it a lot. He will actually take his trade and then he will go through marking up the whole trade and not worry about what else is coming along. Like there's on the 1 minute chart, there's so many possible entries that will come. And so we had a little sort of mastermind chat afterwards, Amy, Jake, and I, and myself today. And we were talking about that and the difference in the feeling when you don't feel desperate and when you don't feel anxious to be looking for the next thing. Because you've already got some here. Mike got 35 points on this. That is well over a third of his daily goal if he's working towards 5% in a day. So I think that's just lovely.
Of the people, so it looks like over half of us didn't take trades today. How do you guys feel about that? In the chat, or if you want to unmute, or I'll just unmute everybody.
I took the same one that you did.
I'm totally fine with that because I'm trading mostly on the 5 minute, and I've had a lot of days in the last 2 weeks where it's just too choppy, too sort of consolidated, but not tightly consolidated, like 100, 150 point range. So it's up and down, not really going anywhere. So I'm totally at ease with it. I got used to it. I got practice.
That's excellent. I think that's a really great practice to have too, is to know that if you feel like it's too volatile or something's not sitting right with you, One of the things that Amy and I like to do is we'll mark up a zone. So if something is kind of bouncing in a range, where it's really not breaking out either side, sometimes I'll look and see, is there a master candle on a higher time frame? Is that creating that kind of consolidation zone?
Mm.
And then looking as well and training your eye to see, is price stuck between the liquid 50 and the 50%? But that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Derek. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that you feel good about that, knowing it. I think that's excellent.
One of the errors, the traps I fall into, it's why I'm very, very cautious about it, is as it goes into consolidation, I'm always trying to trade consolidation, and we know how that turns out every time, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Full stop losses.
so that's probably why I'm getting so good at it, because I've had my share of losses doing it, and my long-term plan, I got to do some research into breakout trades.
Yeah.
And like you say, draw a line on there where the breakout occurs, and obviously you got to know how and where to draw it, and that, which I have to learn. And then when it breaks out of there, then play. Then that gives me a nice clear line to say, okay, out of bounds until breakout time.
That's excellent. And I love that you said as well that you're going to do some research and some back testing on it to see what, it's ultimately about creating probabilities for yourself, right? Like how likely is this scenario to work out in my favor, and how many times does it go against me? Thank you guys for participating in the chat. Also, Jen says that she wasn't trading while feeling sick, only marking up charts. That is an excellent thing to do. Like if you're not feeling yourself, or if you're too tired, or something's going on for you where you're feeling emotional, maybe, a pet is sick or a family member or something like that, then you can have days where you don't trade, and that's normal. And you should have days that you don't trade. And Shelly feels good about it. It was a study and a review day. Absolutely. Teresa didn't take any trades on her call this morning. And so I left the call feeling good, knowing that there was, even though price moved quite a lot during the time that we were on, if there were reasons not to take the trades, then I feel much better for myself, knowing that I listened to that and I followed that. Yvonne wants to get over greed, was up 3% and then went down to 0.8. Okay. So do you want to talk about that, Yvonne? Do you feel comfortable unmuting and sharing a little bit about that process? If not, it's okay too.
Yeah, no, I wasn't impressed with my day. I started out good, and the trades that I just lucked into them basically when news all of a sudden hit, and so I lucked out on it that 2 times today on that when they just spiked, and then I thought, well, I'll just keep on going, and then lost it. So yeah, I was up. I have a 2% is where I'm at. I hit 3+ and then just kept going, and I need to stop going when I get there. So
I think even recognizing it and being aware and like speaking it out loud can give it so much power. And I encourage you to try not to like create any sort of shame, give yourself grace, know that this is part of the process and part of learning. But also it's wonderful that you do recognize it and can say, like, I already know my goal is 2% in a day. So when I've so far past that, like looking at it as a gift and a blessing, or, like a real pat on the back that you recognize trades that went well. I think it's good also to analyze what you said, that some of the trades that you're in just happen to be lucky for you. And so going back and reviewing them and marking them up and looking over, really analyzing like exits, what happened during those candles, making notes that it did spike if there was news, really making sure that you're detailing all of that when you go through it is really important for your growth, especially because you remember it today, it's fresh in your mind, but when you are, 3 months down the road or even a week down the road, if you wanted to come back and review and look at what were my most profitable weeks, what were my most profitable months, Where did I grow the most? Where did I learn the most? Having as much detail about it as possible is going to give you that like evidence or like the really tangible stuff that you can say, okay, here's where I grew and here's why. Because I learned that it was luck, or I learned, you know, we all, of course, want to get to a place where it's based on skill, but we'll take a little luck when it comes our way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. You're welcome.
And Vaughn,
Um,
did you do any journaling on your trades after? Like, do you keep a Excel sheet, or do you have a manual journal where you write down kind of how you were feeling, what made you enter that trade, just to recognize down the road? I think just it's one more reinforcement for you when you're actually writing it down, admitting it to yourself. And I'm saying this because I procrastinated on doing this forever, like forever. And now I just use a spreadsheet, but when I'm in a trade, if I am feeling big emotions in my trade, I'll actually go to my spreadsheet during my trade and type out those emotions. So that when I'm going back to look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, like I was nervous. Why was I so nervous in this trade? Should I have taken it? Like, what are the good things about it? What are the bad things about it? And just see like, were my emotions valid? And if they are, to like really learn to honor those and pay attention to them. And if they weren't, then to recognize that that's a weak spot for me. So one of the reasons I started like adding my fib and adding my long short was kind of like similar to what Jake started, because I would take my trade and I'd instantly just feel panic. And so it gave me a minute to be like, okay, like the trade's going to play out how it's going to play out. Let's just like mark up our possibilities and see what we're looking for, and take a step back instead of just watching every tick on my phone of it going up and going down. It looks like it's moving so much, and then it's really like moved 1 or 2 points only, but my emotions feel like it's gone up 20 points and then down 20 points already.
Right. Yeah. I like what Mike had said about after the trade was done, just marking up that part right there and then, because I was hopping from trade to trade, and it was more of just I don't know. I was in the excited mode of it, and I just went from trade to trade, and then it just, the ones that I planned out that I knew should have been a good trade weren't. So that's where I lost my profit. So yeah. So yeah, no, I am gonna start journaling. I haven't yet. I feel like it was never really a big thing, but I think it is going to have to be. Yeah.
I think once you recognize that and start actually doing the work and applying the tools in this way, it starts to compound your confidence as well. So Stephanie's asking about, can we review the 1734 candle as a buy entry? So I've marked it here. And yeah, definitely. Let's talk through it all together. Oops, I'm going to put it on. Okay, can you all see that all okay?
You betcha.
Perfect. Okay. So there's a couple of things that I notice specifically here. You can see because the indicator calls it out, but also if you just get really used to looking on the TDI, and if you have your indicators open, you can see as well what the differences in price are on the DeLorean TDI here. So you can see price green line moved up and crossed over the liquid 50. It's indicated here, but it's a good idea too to train your eye to get used to like looking for the numbers, looking for the things, because we can't always rely on indicators, or we might, you know, turn something off, and so you want to get used to it. But it crossed up, it crossed back down, and then it crossed back up again. For myself personally, I like it when it seems to reject and kind of like build up a little bit of steam, and in order to push back through. It did not EMA shift for 2 more candles. So for myself personally, again, I like to get that confirmation of the TDI shift and then the EMA shift, especially moving counter trend. But we talked about this one on the call, and the biggest flaw that this had, even though it played out and it went let's see, from entry to its peak was 56 points, or just to the aqua, which would have been the target, was 44 points. So it still would have been a really nice trade. It was never overbought on the TDI. And so price here, even at its lowest point, was 32.4. It never crossed the 30% line on the TDI. So it's something to be really cautious of and aware of. And I've noticed for myself lately that my skills with checking the TDI, it's becoming more second nature. And so some people probably would have taken that and said, you know, it's fun. Maybe in their trading plan, their rules don't require a counter trend trade to be overbought, or certain, pardon me, oversold. But if that is part of your trading plan, and it is part of Teresa's, she specifically said that that's, you know, even though it played out, even though it was a valid W here, and that caused a third TDI shift, which is something I like, it still wasn't a trade that I was willing to take personally. And when Teresa mentioned that also, it was like, it gave extra confirmation. And I think that there's a lot of benefit as well to being able to, somebody said it on the call this morning, where they'll see an entry and they'll mark it up. But even in the doing of that, they don't feel like the FOMO of like, oh, I should have taken that, because they've already done some activity where they get to mark something up. You know, I looked at this also, and there were reasons not to take this. Looking back in hindsight, I still actually liked it. It almost like it didn't really even try to cross the liquid 50. But I was feeling like it's getting down here to the 40%, which is a pretty thick line of resistance. And I think we've been talking about some structure. Oh no, that was on a different entry. And ultimately it played out. It almost went to full TP4 on this entry, but I didn't take that one either. And I was okay with it. And being able to watch trades go by, that you're like, oh, okay, that played out really well. One of the things that I love about, you know, doing the homework and marking things up is it actually gives you more confidence for future trades, because you can see, even though this one played out, if it hadn't, all of these things would have still been part of your homework and would have been part of what you're marking up to look for. And you would have said, oh, I'm really glad I didn't take that, because it didn't. There's still always going to be the trades that go and you're like, oh, you know, trying not to get FOMO about like, oh, I missed out on something. You didn't. You still had an opportunity to learn because you got to mark it up. Does that kind of give you what you were looking for, Stephanie?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much, Leah.
Excellent. Good. I'm so glad. Yeah, I think, you know, if you were to mark up every single engulfing candle or every single possible DLO that's on a chart in a single day, you would truly see how many trades are potentially available to you. And knowing that we're waiting for only the very, very best ones, again, I think also can give you some confidence to know that you're making decisions that you would make again tomorrow, and you would make them again next Wednesday, and you would, you know, if you can say on any day, I would take that trade again every single time I saw it, then I think that's a really good place to get to.
And part of going through and marking up your charts and just really recognizing what are the entries that I seem to take most often, pardon me, sorry, and how do they play out, and having your emotional journal, how do I feel in those trades, and what are the trades that I take that I maybe don't stay in long enough, and how do those play out? But all of that will start factoring in just with your probabilities, right? When you see these entries again, obviously they can go either way, but is there a higher probability because you've seen this quite a few times, and maybe 80% of the time it goes in your favor, so it makes you more willing to accept the risk of that trade without the emotional feelings, because you know you've got a stronger probability. But again, always knowing like, what would be my exit if it goes against me? What am I gonna do to kind of try and preserve my capital?
And that really only comes from having everything in your spreadsheet where you can go back and say, like, this is a very blank copy because this is for a brand new challenge. but Amy has shared with me hers before, and the amount of detail she puts into it, it's really amazing. And you can see it's similar in some ways to like what FTMO gives you for analytics, or what you can get for analytics if you use and link your account to my FX book. You know, it'll show you how many minutes you were in the trade. And think about it like as far as terms of probability, like if I always take, I don't know, let's use this example up at the top here, right? If I always take a TDI shift and it has not closed across the aqua, how many times am I successful in that trade? And what do I determine success to be? Also, how many points am I really looking for? We were looking for it to go to previous structure. And so in this particular instance, it did play out. But how many other times can you find a TDI shift entry that didn't close over a high value EMA, even though this is going with trend? Would you have hesitated if you went back and you marked up 1,000 TDI shifts and found that if they cross over in EMA, do a higher percentage of them play out, or do they fail more often? It's just building your confidence and building your skill.
And then going through these exercises builds into your trading plan, which is something we talked about in one of our earlier group calls. And Mike had said to it this one, like TDI shift is one of my trades, right? When people are making their trading plans, and one of my struggles is like, well, I don't know what my entry is, because I wasn't doing homework and I wasn't marking up trades and I wasn't marking up charts. But through the process, like it organically helps you complete the full circle. So that you would be confident to say, yeah, like TDI shifts are one of my ideal trades that I'm looking for as part of my trading plan. And maybe we've got some extra notes on there about specifically how do you want them to close, or just things through your analytics. But it all starts with actually doing the work.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions that we can review for you?
Is there any document that like outlines all of the main entries and exits that Teresa talks about? Like I know she talks about them throughout all of her videos, but has she ever put together a document or something that really just compiles it all, and like this is the Coles Notes version that you can refer to every day as you're trading? I guess I could make my own document that way, but I'm just curious.
In her course, she really details it. So if you review her course, I don't think she's done like workbook or something like that yet. I know that a lot of these types of things are in the works, especially for people who like she's going to be creating more and more beginner materials also, but it just takes a little bit of time. So
And I know we could drop a link for the Candlestick Bible, which is a massive.
Can't hear you, Amy.
Oh,
Can hear
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I moved my speaker. Pardon me. We could drop a link for the Candlestick Bible, which I think it's got over 100 pages of visual specific, what do the candle patterns actually look like and what do you want them to do. So great exercise to read through that, but you could specifically go through and pull out what are the boss candle entries and make your own document. I know it's always great when somebody's got something prefabbed for you, but it's also like trying to take a shortcut to success. You're going to retain a lot more and maybe even notice some additional entries just to be familiar with them as well when you're scrolling through.
Oh, totally. Yeah, making my own document would just really solidify the learning for sure. And I think actually I did see shared in your shared documents. So I will look at that.
You have the link
Awesome.
still?
If
I do.
you're
Yeah.
okay with it, I have taken my trading plan that I had and taken out the candle structures or candle patterns, and I can share that for everyone.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you, Mike.
Again, this was part of my trading plan, and then I realized maybe I need to develop my trading plan a little bit differently, and I have taken the candle patterns out. It's something that I would review all the time. Obviously, you don't recognize as a beginner, you don't recognize the candle patterns for quite a while. And Teresa talks about it, right? MES MES Delo and MES, right? Or a Morning Star or an Evening Star are different than an MES Delo, and one is continuation, right? And you have to realize that. Once you visualize that continuation, um, it was told to me you don't lose it, and it's hilarious. It takes a while to get it, but once you get it, you can't stop seeing these engulfing delos and stuff like that. So just keep in mind that as a beginner, you got to do the work, and it's very important to do the work. So
This is one that took me the longest, is recognizing LLs. I was so confused by them initially. And then just like Mike is saying, and Amy said it last week as well, once your eyes become trained to recognize things just at a glance, then like Mike's saying, you can't unsee it. You're like, oh, there's that. Oh, here's this. Oh, look at that. And it's really cool. And again, it builds confidence. But I agree with Amy. I think that if you make your own cheat sheets, you make your own like notes, you make your own little reference materials, you're going to learn and retain so much more. And even like not necessarily taking it from Googling what is this thing on the internet, but go and look for patterns actually on a chart and take little screenshots and copy them and snip them out and put them into your little workbooks or something like that. Like the more work you do yourself, it's going to cement it in your mind. So I'll just quickly share then, because we want to wrap up right on time tonight. I'll share the trade that I marked up today and a little bit about my journal with it. So in my compounding sheet, I took a single trade. It profited $173. Bear in mind, this is a demo. And the date of my entry, here's my entry time. What was the type of entry? It was with the trend. What was my lot size? I trailed my stop loss. There's my value. The comments, it was an MES in a trending run. It was far from the aqua, but it moved to the bottom of the Bollinger Bands. It rejected leaving the Bollinger Bands, and it was part of a massive move up while the DXY was sinking like a stone. Emotions, I fully recognize it was FOMO. I wanted to get into the trending run. And in hindsight, that is something I would definitely reconsider. And so I marked up the trade. This is how I marked it up. And where I failed to complete this markup is I didn't say how I got out. So I was using Janie. Janie's assisting me with my challenge. I entered after this MES. This run, let me just see if I can quickly go back and show you what happened today. So this is the move that I got FOMO on. And I think a lot of traders would feel the same feelings. And I recognize what is so bad about it is, you know, we talk about falling knife syndrome. This is the same thing. It's trying to catch a run while it's running, and I started looking for reasons to take the trade, which is the opposite of what I'm supposed to be doing. And so with full transparency and vulnerability, I admit that I still have to work on some of these things as well. So going back to, oopsies, how do I do that? Oh my gosh. My markup, it had already left the Bollinger Bands, but it came up, and at the time of my MES that I recognized, it had like rejected leaving the Bollinger Bands. Then it went into some consolidation here and left the Bollinger Bands and came back in, left again and came back in. But it was still kind of hovering at the 60%. And so I had a little bit of hope in my plan, which was not ideal also. And I recognized that because I was hoping that the 60 was going to continue to hold price up. And I went and I looked at another, so the DXY, for anyone who doesn't know, it's the US dollar index. And because of some of the speeches and the things that happened today, the US dollar had a lot of weakness. And so even a lot of pairs that were traded against the US dollar, like the Canadian dollar and so on, they were all trending in favor of the opposite of the pair. US dollar was sinking. And so I thought that this would possibly continue even higher. And it did. It continued to go up for quite a bit more, even beyond this trade. In hindsight, I see that if I had not trailed the way that I did, so I was in scalper mode, and this candle got so big so fast that it quick captured it, which means it took me out at around TP1. So it was still a good amount of earnings from it and a good amount of points. But you can see how, it could have potentially gone further, but how many of these other candles would have wicked back and closed below the yellow? Like, so to assume or think that you're going to catch all of that is probably, that's greed, I would say. And also it had this previous high. So where the candle body is painted to, at most, maybe, in this wick, if I could have maybe got it to TP2, possibly. But again, it's moving so fast that the reality of it is very unlikely that you would have. Perhaps I could have been in a little bit longer, and then on the next candle when it opened, it came down. It could have even got me at my entry. So I'm grateful for what I had, but I do recognize that this was not the best trade to take for a lot of different reasons. And so I'm being honest and transparent and sharing all of that with you guys. Also, one of the, I guess, the wins from this was that when I entered this trade, I didn't move my stop loss. It did end up getting trailed up, but I was actually fully comfortable with the risk of taking that trade. Even though there were reasons I shouldn't have necessarily taken it, I still was like trusting that if I'm going to enter this trade, I am willing to risk the amount of money that, or the amount of points or whatever it is in my stop loss, in order to take that trade. And the risk to reward on it was not very good, because this is the fractal that's down here. So my stop loss was below that level. But I just wanted to share with you guys and show you, like, even though it wasn't the best trade to take for so many different reasons, doing this exercise of marking it up and being truthful with myself and including all of that in the compounding chart, or sorry, compounding like workbook, is all to my benefit for the future, because now I have that record and I can review it in the future. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about or share? No? Okay, well, we could
Thank you,
probably,
Leah.
yes, thank you.
Thank you, Leah, very much. I'd just like to say something too. Now that I look at that trade and you guys mark it up with me, not a very good trade. So it's, you got to find the reasons not to take trades as well, right? So after marking that up, you think, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with where my stop loss was, right? Do I like it getting hit? Never. So a better setup could be better traded. Yes, 100%, because that's mindset. So just discussing that here with you guys, Whippy, I made money on that trade, right? But maybe I got a little lucky too. Maybe it wasn't the best trade out there. And more patience is important. And that's something that I'll be very honest with you. I was an overtrader, and I still am once in a while, and I'm learning not to be. So
Yes, thank you
thank you for letting me share.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
for sharing,
with us.
Mike. Appreciate it.
I just love, Leah, how you're teaching us and Teresa to approach everything like a scientist, right? Just really manage all the variables and be very aware of the whys of what you're doing, right? It's great.
Thank you. That's cute. You actually mentioned it in that way, because I was talking with Amy and Jake earlier, and they said, in a way, it's kind of like grade 5 science class, right? You like create your hypothesis, and then you like have your experiment, and you see how did it work out for you, and is that something that you would do again in the future, and how would you adjust, and what would you do differently? But if you never do this act, of actually marking up and reviewing your own trades, you'll never, it's like, forget how Amy said it, but like people's minds, they block out the things that they don't want to see. They block out the things that cause you pain. Am I butchering the quote, Amy?
No, I don't remember it specifically. It was just from Trading the Zone, but along the lines of if you're in a trade that's going against you, which is like in the past one of my struggles, and you'll look for every reason to support why the market's going to turn around in your favor, because your mind is physically trying to protect you from that emotional pain because you've still kind of got that hang up where you haven't truly accepted the risk or you wouldn't feel any pain. And I lost my train of thought.
But it's yeah, so along those lines, that was kind of what I was thinking of, like if you never actually do the act of marking up your trades and objectively reviewing them and going through all of the different things, because it's an emotional thing. We're on a 1 minute chart. Sometimes a lot of people feel like, oh my gosh, it's so fast, how can I take this trade and then draw the Fibonacci and then do all of these things, you know, and that all comes with practice, and that comes with doing the work also. But I used to hide from this pain because you only wanted to remember the trades that went your way. You only wanted to celebrate your successes. I mean me. And I didn't want to go back and review the areas where I had room for improvement or where I completely like blew it. But in doing this is where I've gotten so much better.
And the second part of that was how after you're out of the trade, when you go back and look at it, you can clearly see. So say, for example, Leah took this as a buy entry on the 40 candle, but say you took this as a sell entry on the 41 candle, right? Like we were up at the 80. We've got a pretty nice M. It's TDI shifted down. It's kind of like there's a lot of reasons to take this for a sell. And so it's bouncing around. You're like, oh yeah, okay, well now we've got it's a master candle too, so it's going to break back out below in my favor. Oh, and it shifted down. Oh, it shifted back up. Oh, but it shifted back down. Oh, and it's pushing down on the candle before the green one. You'll convince yourself that it's going to go in your favor, and then as you watch it go up, you're going to tell yourself like, oh, but it was so oversold, like it's got to turn around eventually. And look at that divergence on the 1 minute, like, oh man, this is totally coming back to me. In the meanwhile, you're either taking a full stop loss, or if you're a person who doesn't trade with a stop loss, which is like highly discouraged. I would not recommend this from personal experience. But you'll find every reason then after the fact, if you scroll your chart down and scroll your chart out, you can see clearly like we are in an uptrend. Like why were we looking for a sell when the market was clearly in a buy mode? So part of that after the fact reflecting is your mind is now will allow you to see what it was blocking. So if you don't ever go back and look at your trades, that's just like the start of the process to recognizing where your blocks are. And it's a long journey to fix them, but the first step is admitting that they're there and having an awareness. Like if you find yourself saying that, like, oh look, no, it's got to come back down, that should be a trigger for you now to be like, wait a second, like let's zoom out and see what's actually happening here. Is it going to come down, or are we in a clear uptrend and I'm just hope trading, holding on to this, making my situation worse?
It's going to be tiny and weird. Okay, anyway. Yes. Thank you, Amy, for sharing that. It's so valid. So it's a really terrible rectangle. It's not working out for me, but this is where my trade was, and this is where it ultimately went up to. Very late to the game as far as trying to get into this uptrend. But thank you. Yes, equally reasons why it might not have been the best place to look for sells, but I think that's what I did, is I convinced myself that it was still going to go up more, and ultimately on review, not a good place to be taking the trade anyway. But thank you all for being here with us for the third week. We really appreciate you. Thank you for your participation. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for putting comments in the chat. And we appreciate every single one of you. I hope that you're getting value from this. and that you continue to grow and that you continue to share the things that you learn along the way. And the more that we strengthen this community and we build each other up, Sally says so much value. Thank you. I get a lot of
Plus, it's safe zone, guys. Whatever is
Yeah.
said in this chat only gets shared on YouTube.
but it's for us, you know, and I know that there's a lot of people who've just been watching the recordings back because it hasn't worked out for them due to their work schedule or different things that they're doing. And I think we're really creating a strong community of people who are here to support each other, and we all want to see each other win. So thank you all, and I hope you have a beautiful evening.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.